Are you happy in your business? Now, I have had my share of emotional ups and downs in my 20 years of being a solo entrepreneur coach. And the patterns I've seen in myself and in my clients is that those downs are usually when I was personally feeling unfulfilled. Sometimes it was because a launch that flopped, and sometimes it was just life and had nothing to do with business. But those ups, oh boy, those are the times when I was feeling my most authentic and completely aligned to my purpose, or when I just felt like I was rocking that work-life balance. I would be thinking I could do this all day long and never feel tired. One of my loves is sharing what works for me and what has been working for my clients to achieve this very feeling, full of passion, happiness, peace, and freedom. So I decided to create a private podcast for coaches. Maybe you just want to develop better communication skills that boosts engagement, leads to better results, and makes you feel like you're actually making a difference in the lives of the people you serve. Then you're invited too. We talk about this and more in the UBU private podcast for coaches. Whether you're a mentor, a parent, or run a client-focused business, coaching skills benefit everyone and anyone who wants to communicate in a way that builds relationships. Fall in love with your life and business again. Click the link in the show notes for your invitation to join us right now. Then come back and enjoy this episode. Hey, difference maker. Today we're here with Dorene Olsen talking about the 5 love languages. And I'm so excited. If this is the first time at catching this series, what we are doing is going through different personality systems to really understand ourselves and unbox ourselves in a different way. Maybe you're new to the Enneagram and you're not quite picking it up, but you understand, Myers Brigg, or you understand love languages. Or maybe, Enneagram is old hat and you're kind of bored with it and you just want to know what are other ways that I can see myself. And of course, I'm married to the Enneagram, so everything is filtered through that lens of, this love language, this is what the love language is teaching me about my type 7ness, and really understanding that. Really, the purpose is just to be able to unbox yourself, because the more you can unbox yourself, the more you can unleash your power, and that is what goes into your business. Let's go ahead and get started. It's time to stop comparing yourself to others and plug into what is uniquely you. Welcome to Unbox Your Personality, the podcast for coaches, creatives, and educators like you who understand that your happiness makes you more effective in what you do, bringing out the best in others. I'm Jen P. Higgins, personality strategist and Enneagram fluff remover. Get laser focused on who you are and who you aren't, so you're free to make the impact you were born to make. And have fun doing it. Your personality is your business. So let's get down to business. And without further ado, let's introduce Dorene.
Yes, and I'm ready to chat with you. And full-on expression. Why? The better we can express ourselves, the better people can connect with us. And that's what I love about Gary Chapman's 5 love languages, and bringing that into our personal lives, bringing that into our business lives, bringing that into our connections, and it actually kind of frees up some space for us and brings tension down, brings stress down. We know more, we can express more.
So why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself a little bit and how you were first introduced to the love languages. And then I'd love for you, for someone who has just never heard of the love languages, I'm sure somebody out there has never heard of it, to just kind of go through a basic rundown of what it is and then what those profiles are.
Okay. So, yes. My business called Savory Insights is focused on brand expression. How do we help people remember us? It is through expression. And the more energy we can share and the words that we share, the language that we share, all starts to ladder back to our values. And when we do that, it's certainly much easier to relate to others, because your audience, your people, your family is going to be like, wait, I feel seen. I feel heard. I feel acknowledged. I feel understood. And they lean in instead of pulling back from you, no matter the circumstance. And that's what so much of the five love languages. Let me back up for a moment. I read this book, and Gary Chapman is, I believe he is a pastor, that he was counseling couples, and he noticed that there was a pattern happening in all of the couples that he was marriage counseling for. And that people, when they heard this kind of language, they would feel seen and feel respected, feel loved, feel supported, have a sense of surety. So the five love languages, the first love language is found in words of affirmation. These are people that love to be acknowledged. You'll hear this in their language of, hey, did you see what I did? Was that helpful? Words of affirmation, they're seeking validation, and in a way that feels comfortable, that feels good. And it isn't necessarily look at me. It's more, do they see me, right? Their questions are really, do you see me? So words of affirmation are really important. And as I share these with you, it's helpful to note them because you'll want to force rank them yourself or even take the quiz that's available. Gary Chapman has a quiz available online. You can see, what your first language is, what your second one is, what your third language is. You can even do it have your kids take the quiz and understand their language. So number one is words of affirmation. Number two is quality time. And these are the people that are probably planners. These are the people that want to make sure that there is a level of intimacy in what they're doing, that the time that they spend means something. Number three is receiving gifts. So I have a family member that, that's really, she spends all year long thinking about gifts. Why? Because she cares about how gifts make her feel. And so she wants to make sure that that kind of feels the same way for the people that she's buying for. So she's literally the day after the holidays, she is thinking about, what am I going to do for next year's gift? Because gifts are how she sees herself validated and cared for and seen. There's acts of service. That's number four. And this is where you'll see when people express a way of like, I'm so grateful you shared that with me. I'm so glad you were able to help me with that. They really appreciate acts of service, but they also really appreciate delivering acts of service. So they are often in volunteer roles. They are the people that are coming to the party saying, you know what, I know it's hard for you to understand, like decide what to bring or have us all bring. How about if I bring a side dish and a dessert dish? They've already decided what they're going to help serve. And then they're the people also that are moving around the gathering and helping you serve others because service is important to them. They're often in hospitality industries. And they really have a caring perspective of, do you have everything you need? Because if you have everything you need, then they have a sense of validation that what they've contributed is helpful. The last one is personal touch. Personal touch is, you'll find that in people those are the people that when they talk to you, they'll often touch your elbow or touch your wrist. They'll gently touch and acknowledge, and they need to feel you, or they are people that want to be felt. And personal touch, I thought, would be very high in my family. It's actually rent forth in most of my family members, even though we're big huggers, because we receive our validation in the other ways. So number one, words of affirmation. Number two is quality time. Number three, receiving gifts, which comes out really in interesting ways. 4, acts of service, and 5 is personal touch. And what's important about each of these languages is when you understand what somebody else appreciates, you can start to speak in their language and there's an intimacy that's created. It doesn't need to be a romantic intimacy. It can be something that, somebody really just feels a connection with you, personally or professionally.
I love how you said that these are the people that usually blah, blah, blah. Because that really puts it in perspective. And maybe it's just because I'm a thinker and I put things in boxes. Without those examples, sometimes it can be hard for me to come out of theory and into practice. But one of the things you said that really fascinates me from a psychological standpoint is you said that you really thought that your family would have been because you're huggers, that personal touch, but you receive validation in a different way. That is mind blowing to me, because when it's kind of like the Enneagram is based off of motivations, but we tend to define Enneagram types by their behaviors because that's all we can see. All we can see is from the outside. And so a lot of times we make these assumptions that, oh, they must be a type, whatever. They're a hugger. They must be personal touch. And it's not necessarily true. And okay, so I'm the questioner. I'm a words of affirmation. I used to think I was a quality time person because that's typical for a type 7. And I want to say up front, love languages and Enneagram, they're not one to one, or there's not a correlation there. So I just want to say that people try to make a correlation there. It's not, it's different. I used to think I was a quality time because type 7s love experiences and going out and, just exploring, but I can do that alone. I don't need someone else to validate that for me. But words of affirmation, you said these are the people who ask questions, and I do. I'm a questioner. I am always trying to make sure, okay, are we connecting here? Does that make sense? I say that a lot. Is this helpful? You said that, and I was like, oh yeah, I say that a lot. But my joke is that it's my love language are ha-has of affirmation. So I get a lot of validation when people think I'm funny or entertaining, at least, which is also speaks to my type 7ness. Are you feeling a bit disappointed that you haven't finished that project yet? Are the kids' schedules impacting your business? Or are the demands of your business affecting your relationships at home? Maybe you need a magic formula for that work-life balance before your fire gets so dim or it completely burns out. I've been there. There was a point in my life where I was juggling 2 businesses and homeschooling and had personal health issues. There was barely time to even connect with myself, much less connect with my husband. When I was finally officially diagnosed with ADHD, I felt like that explained everything. I had a new perspective and started approaching things in a new way. So I created a guide containing 20 tips that I personally use, and they have worked for me for helping me stay on course with my goals. Now, you might not have ADHD, but I bet you can relate to having a million distractions during the day. So if you're ready to stop procrastinating or stop being hard on yourself for missing yet another deadline, self-imposed or not, go ahead and download the guide at powercoachjen.com. If you just find one tip from the list that helps you move forward today, you will be so glad you took the time to read it. Go to powercoachjen.com and download the guide right now.
And that keeps the playfulness in the language as well. So each of these offer another dimension of what's important to a person, but it's also, they're not in a box in that these 5 love languages, if we put them in a pie chart, each of the 5 love languages for each person will be a little bit different, so I am acts of service, which can also be a difficult thing for me to receive, right? So I am a giver, right? And I enjoy that. There is much validation for that. But what's beautiful is also recognizing that in these acts of service, there is a giving, there's a receiving, there's a giving and a receiving. That's why we have thank you notes, right? But yeah, words of affirmation are really interesting. I remember when my husband, this is before I had read the 5 love languages, literally the week before. And my husband, we had a space in our first floor bathroom, total remodel. And in this space, I wanted to have a vanity of some sort. And I kept looking at tables and such. Well, my husband loves woodworking. And he secretly came up with a credenza that he could build. And he cut, he finished, he painted, he stained, he did a wood inlay to the top. I mean, this piece is absolutely beautiful, and it's built into my my first floor bath. And 4 drawers that for 4 people in the home and extra storage underneath. A beautiful inlay top that he kind of stretched himself with to do something pretty that would match the floor, right? And after a couple of days of having this credenza, he says to me one day at breakfast, so how's that that vanity, that little credenza in there, how's that working for you? And I said, I think it's really good. I enjoy it, but why is the top wood and the rest is painted white? And so I had the opportunity to validate his work and his thought process and all. And instead of asking questions that were more about the design and all, well, I did ask about the design, but I asked in a way that was like, you didn't do it right. And instead, he shared with me, he said, well, that's the top actually, I wanted to kind of tie it in with the flooring that we have. And that's why it looks like this. He did a masterful job. And I had the opportunity to give him words of affirmation of here's how it could look differently. Okay, here's a good example. Oh, the credenza. Thank you so much. I noticed there's 4 drawers. And, is that for one for each person? Is that what you were thinking in your engineering mind? And then there's more storage underneath. I love how you painted the bottom of it. I mean, the wainscoting and all like matches the rest of the room and the top, like keeping, I know wood is important to you and like having that beautiful dark colored inlay, like that adds such a pretty dimension and all the lacquer that you, the luster that's on top is beautiful. So how did you come up with all of that? It could have looked so different. Instead, I devalidated him, in his effort, So those are the ways that we can look at something. And it's not that I'm giving inauthentic feedback because I was thinking all of those things. And I also was faced with him knowing he's an engineer and he looks at what could be better. And that was his question right after that. Like, is there anything you would have done differently? Is there anything that you want better? Like, no, even the drawers are just the right size. Like everything's so well thought of. Like, and that space becomes highly functional instead of dysfunctional. Like it's exactly, I could have bought a table and it wouldn't have done the same thing, and he gets to go in there every day and see his work and feel good about his work. So that's one example for words of affirmation. Quality time I recognized in my sister, who is always pulling the family together, and asking about the next big event, hey, can we get together on this date and do this significant thing? Because I want to make sure that we have time together, and she's also the one that makes the phone calls to most of the people. Sometimes she's the organizer, sometimes I'm the organizer, but it is about how we are spending our time, or I think her words would be more about investing time. How is she investing time? Receiving gifts. I learned before I even knew about love languages, I had a vice president who I would notice something, like a new set of earrings or I knew something that she had in her presence. And it was always a personal gift. And she would say, oh yeah, with every bonus, I make sure I acknowledge that bonus with a little gift for myself. And so she was teaching herself self-empowerment through gifting even to herself, not counting on other people to always deliver gifts. And she was also a person that was very aware and looking to give that memorable gift to her staff. And she was often planning experiences. So what does that tell you? Number 1 was probably gifts. Number 2, quality time, But coming back to personal touch, have you ever been in a space or had a conversation where you almost feel like the heat of somebody else's body, like they are so in your space that they're talking to you and they're talking almost intimately and they really want to know and they really want to be in your energy, right? And sometimes you feel like, whoa, that's like too much, right? And other times we can even be an introvert and that feels sensational. That feels like connection, right? And that is the person that will kind of like whisper to the camera, that they really want to make that personal touch, that one-on-one touch with everyone, and they do it so naturally when they are fully in their own expression. It's only when we're holding back that we don't have that sense of connection, that sense of expression. And as I'm sharing with you, I'm thinking about a woman who used to be an art teacher at our middle school. And she's a very influential person in town to getting people together for auctions and different things. And when you are in her presence, her personal touch, like she is the one that she will reach out and like hold your hand for a minute and say, and how is it that we get that done? Oh, yeah, that's something that we should work on together. And I'm holding like hands together. And you don't mind it because she is authentic and she's drawing you in to be authentic as well. So are these things
Yeah,
helpful?
I think it's really interesting. I want to ask you a question about that personal touch because I think sometimes there is an inner longing that doesn't quite match up with an external longing. And that could be trauma based. And we definitely don't have time to go into that, but I would love to explore that for sure.
I'm going to let you
Um,
think about that, but I did want to touch on the fact that like these five love languages, right, I believe are learned as well as intuitive. So acts of service, I did not see a lot of service oriented things. I grew up in a very much a working environment, so my dad was handling not one, but two, but three jobs, and wait a minute, that's probably where it is because he also volunteered a lot of time for his town work. And he is somebody that is very service oriented, so he is always trying to provide. And I mean, he's going to be turning 80 and he's still very actively providing acts of service on those volunteer ways. So what I was saying about, it can be experience based, both good and bad. There may be trauma aspects that do shape our past, but I do believe that the love languages are highly intuitive. They are the essence of how we hear and feel, so, personal touch, I think I had a fair amount of personal touch, as a child. And so maybe that's why I don't need that personal touch as recognition or acknowledgement going forward. Like that's much lower. And I also, I enjoy gifts, but gifts are lower on my ranking. My ranking is acts of service, quality time, words of affirmation, gifts, and then personal touch, or personal touch and gifts are almost the same, if we were talking percentages. So I think there's an intuitive side and there's an experiential side. And I also think that there's ways, like if we were to look at these five love languages and look at the percentages as we move through different phases of our lives, those percentages may shift a little bit, but I do think the primary stays the same and it may shift in a different way. My sister, who is very much a quality time person, whether she's planning the next trip or the next event, or simply planning how she wants somebody to feel on the other end of the phone when they're FaceTiming or what have you. What makes her happy is to offer quality time and receive quality time. So that doesn't change.
I like the words that you're choosing to describe these. It really connects for me. That is really helpful.
All about
The other thing that I thought of was when I developed the acknowledgement languages for the Enneagram, and that's the basis of the book that I put out last year.
this.
It came from this idea of what you're talking about. It's kind of like love languages, except for it's acknowledgement languages. It's not necessarily, how we feel love, but it's an acknowledgement of how we process things or how we respond to things. And it doesn't necessarily validate in a love kind of way, but validate in a right to exist kind of way. And sometimes that could be invisible. Like the way we process things, nobody can observe that. You can't observe the way somebody internally processes things.
And
So
and that is true. And sometimes we're not even aware of how we are processing things. Um, we don't have the opportunity to see ourselves frequently, right? And especially if we're not ready to get on camera, if we're not ready to step up and become our brand, and we know we need to be, it can be really hard to do that. But when we see our expression, when we can hear well, we can see ourselves and we can also view ourselves with a level of compassion and not worry about like, oh, how does our hair look? Or, taking ourselves down and criticizing, and instead see what's working and what we can build upon. It moves so fast. And that's exactly what we're doing in the boot camp. Is it's really a visibility experience. And when we feel seen, heard, known, understood, acknowledged, whatever the words are that help you to feel connected, to feel respected, to feel grounded and sure and comforted by what somebody's sharing or with you. They're talking with you. They're having a conversation with you instead of talking at you. It shifts everything, and you are able to see yourself in a different way, in a different light. And when we see ourselves with that compassion, we connect with ourselves better. And as we're expressing ourselves, we're connecting with ourselves better so that we can connect with others in an easier way.
Absolutely.
all
I
of that.
love that. I love that. Yes, that is what this podcast is all about. That's what this group is all about. This networking with business owners is really understanding ourselves better. So I love the word you use, self-empowerment, for the gifts, the receiving gifts person. She self-empowered herself without having to need that outside validation and showing up as her true self. Real quickly, before we close the live stream, can you just let people know where they can find you online?
Yes. So I encourage you, if you are interested in brand expression, that is personal expression or professional expression, I have a free group and you are welcome to join it on Facebook. It is Brand Expression and Expansion for Creative Leaders. And I have to say, when you are able to really express yourself, some of what we've talked about today is words, but there's also energy behind those words. Like when you really own your words, it feels different. It feels like your words instead of somebody else's words, instead of somebody else. I'm going to say shoulding on you, SHOULDING. Like, that doesn't work. When we are able to see our inner selves in the outer work and use our natural language, everything starts to shift and people are able to see us a little easier and connect a little easier. So that expression is super important. And it's a tool that you can use and learn more about as you're learning more about yourself. So these 5 love languages, it's only the start, and it's so juicy. It's so incredible to go deeper. And I'm still learning about myself and those around me so that I can communicate better. Words matter. And if they're our words, they connect even better with our people.
Thank you so much, Dorene, for being here.
Thank you, listeners, for our time too.
Thank you for listening, subscribing, and reviewing the Unbox Your Personality podcast. To learn more about yourself, go to powercoachjen.com. Find out how you are different so you can make your difference.